Ma'am, I said you can sit with the staff in the back. The young hostess didn't just say it. She snapped it across the marble entryway, loud enough for half the restaurant to hear, her voice slicing through the warm hum of dinner service and clinking stemware. Several heads turned. A couple near the window stopped mid-conversation. A waiter carrying a tray of black cod paused for one dangerous second. Even the bartender glanced up from polishing a glass. The old woman standing just inside the front doors did not move. She was small, brown-skinned, silver hair pinned neatly back. A simple cardigan rested over her floral blouse, and her handbag looked soft with age, the kind of bag someone kept for years because it still worked. She did not look like money. She did not look like influence. She looked like someone's Lola who had come too early to pick up a cousin after shift. The hostess's smile had vanished entirely now. "You can't stand here blocking the entrance," she said. "If you're waiting for one of the kitchen girls, wait in the back. This area is for guests." The old woman opened her mouth gently. "I'm not here to." But the hostess cut her off with a tight little laugh, the kind sharpened by an audience. "Yes, I heard you the first time." A man in a fitted charcoal suit standing beside the host stand, assistant manager, judging by the earpiece and the self-importance, looked the grandmother up and down and sighed as though she were a stain on the carpet. "Rena," he said to the hostess, not even pretending to lower his voice, "why is she still standing here?" Rena shrugged. "She says she's here for dinner." The assistant manager barked a short laugh. That got a few nervous smiles from nearby staff. Not because it was funny, because he was the kind of man people laughed with before he decided they were next. The old woman clasped her hands over her purse. "I do have a reservation," she said. He blinked once, then leaned forward with open disbelief. "A reservation?" "Yes. Under what name?" There was no tremor in her voice when she answered, "Reyes." He looked down at the screen, scrolled, looked again, then smirked. "There's no table for a Reyes waiting up front." She studied him for a quiet second. "I believe there is." That should have been the end of it. A competent person would have checked again, asked a question, called someone over. Instead, the assistant manager straightened and let contempt do the work for him. "No," he said flatly. "I think what happened is one of the dishwashers or line cooks told you to come in through the front because they didn't want to walk around and get you. That doesn't make you a guest." A few people at the bar heard that clearly. One woman frowned. Her husband looked away. The old woman's face did not change, but there was something in her stillness now that made one of the servers near the wall lower his eyes. Across the room, a prep cook pushing through the swinging kitchen doors saw her and froze. "Tita Lena?" he whispered. He was too far away for the front to hear, but not too far to feel the blood drain from his face. Everyone in the kitchen knew stories. Not official stories. Not framed-on-the-wall stories. Whispers. The kind that floated between prep stations and over stock pots when the executive team wasn't listening. About the woman who had once built a catering business out of a church basement and one borrowed stove. About the woman who could taste a sauce once and tell you which part of your timing was wrong. About the woman who had fed labor strikes, funerals, weddings, and fundraisers before half the city's polished chefs knew how to hold a knife. About the woman Chef Alessandra never referred to by first name alone. Always. Miss Rise taught me that. Not taught me to cook, taught me hospitality, taught me standards, taught me what a dining room means, taught me what respect tastes like. The prep cook stood rooted in the kitchen doorway, heart hammering, as the assistant manager at the front continued digging his grave with perfect confidence. "Ma'am," he said, voice flattening into public cruelty, "this is a Michelin-starred restaurant. People book months in advance to sit here. You can't just wander in because you know someone on staff." The side server near him snorted. Rena smiled now, encouraged. "If you want, I can ask someone to bring your friend out on break." A soft ripple of laughter came from two younger host staff. The old woman turned her head slightly toward them, not offended, just looking. That made the laughter die faster than it started. "I am expected," she said. The assistant manager folded his arms. "By who?" She met his eyes. "By everyone who still works here." That landed strangely. Too clean, too calm. For one second, even Rena looked uncertain. Then the assistant manager recovered and stepped closer, lowering his voice in the way cruel people do when they think intimacy makes humiliation sharper. Listen carefully. I don't know who you think you are, but you are making a scene in a room you do not belong in. The old woman answered just as quietly. No, I'm standing in a room I know very well. Something about that should have warned him. But men like him only recognize power when it was dressed like their own reflection. He gave a humorless smile. You know what? Fine. Tell me your full name so I can note it in case your staff friend files some dramatic complaint later. She adjusted her grip on the purse. Lena Reyes. The name meant nothing to him. That was the problem. He nodded as though indulging a child. Great. Miss Reyes, here is what's going to happen. You are going to stop embarrassing yourself, walk through that service corridor, and wait in the back with the rest of the employees' visitors. One of the dishwashers had now stepped halfway out from the kitchen hall. Then another. Then a server. Not one of them moved closer. Not yet. But they were watching now with the strained, awful attention of people who knew exactly how wrong this had become. Lena Reyes glanced past the assistant manager and into the dining room. Candles flickered on each white-clothed table. Conversations swelled and softened. Wine caught amber under low light. At the far wall hung a framed black-and-white photograph from the restaurant's earliest days. A cramped first location, 6 tables, one tiny open kitchen, and a much younger woman standing beside steam and smiling without showing teeth. No one at the front desk had ever bothered to learn who she was. Rena followed the direction of her gaze and rolled her eyes. Ma'am, she said, impatience rising again, are you even listening? Lena looked back at her. Yes. Then go. The old woman drew one breath, slow and even. From somewhere deeper inside the restaurant came the sudden sound of a chair scraping back hard. Then footsteps. Fast. Decisive. Not the hurried steps of a busser or server, but the kind that changed the temperature of a room before the person even arrived. The prep cook near the kitchen door stepped aside immediately. A line chef did the same. The swinging doors opened, and when the executive chef emerged, saw the woman at the front, and stopped dead in her tracks, the entire rhythm of the restaurant seemed to shatter at once. She went pale, not confused, horrified. Madre de Dios, she breathed, then louder, with the kind of fear that makes every nearby spine lock straight. What have you done? The room didn't just go quiet. It tightened, like something invisible had pulled every breath inward and held it there. The assistant manager frowned, irritated more than concerned. Chef, we're handling a situation. What have you done? The executive chef repeated, louder now, her voice cracking in a way no one had ever heard before. She didn't look at him. She walked past him, fast, too fast for dignity, too controlled for panic, but unmistakably urgent. Every step closed the distance between her and the old woman standing at the entrance. The entire front-of-house staff shifted instinctively, parting without being told, because something was wrong. Deeply wrong. The chef stopped 3 feet away from Lena Reyes. And then she bowed her head, not a polite nod, not professional acknowledgement, a full, unmistakable lowering of her posture. Ma'am, she said, voice low, reverent, and shaken, you should have told me you were coming. The assistant manager blinked. Once, twice. What? He started, but no one was listening to him anymore. Lena Reyes regarded the chef with the same calm she had carried since the moment she walked in. I did, she said gently. The words landed like a quiet verdict. Behind them, the prep cook felt his chest tighten. He knew this moment, not from experience, from stories, from warnings whispered between shifts. If she ever comes in, everything changes. The chef straightened just slightly, but her eyes flicked once toward the assistant manager. And in that single glance, there was fury. Not loud, not explosive, controlled, precise, the kind that dismantled people professionally and permanently. Who spoke to her like that? The chef asked. No one answered, because everyone knew. The assistant manager tried to recover. He stepped forward, forcing a confident smile that no longer fit his face. Chef, there's been a misunderstanding. She said she had a reservation, but there's nothing under that name, and we have protocols. Stop. The word cut him off instantly. Not shouted, not dramatic, but absolute. He froze, because this was not how Chef Alessandra spoke to anyone, ever. She turned fully toward him now, and for the first time since she walked out, she addressed him directly. Say her name. He hesitated. Reyes. Her expression didn't change. Full name, Lena Reyes. The chef inhaled slowly, as if steadying something far heavier than anger. Then she spoke clearly enough for the entire front dining room to hear. Lena Reyes is the owner of this restaurant. Silence. Not the polite kind, not the curious kind. A vacuum, a complete disorienting absence of sound. The assistant manager's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Rena's hands dropped from the tablet she was holding. It nearly slipped from her grip. At the bar, the woman who had frowned earlier covered her mouth. A server whispered, "No way." The chef continued. She founded the original kitchen. She trained the first staff. She financed the expansion. And everything you see here, her hand gestured to the dining room, the polished floors, the glowing tables, exists because she built it before any of us were invited into it. Every word landed harder than the last. The assistant manager shook his head slightly, like he could physically dislodge what he was hearing. That's not. If she was the owner, we would have been told. You were told to respect every guest who walks through that door. The chef didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. You were told to treat people with dignity regardless of what you assume they are. His throat tightened. I was just following. No, she said. You were performing. That word hit differently, because it was true, and worse. Everyone knew it. A murmur spread through the room. Low, uncomfortable. The audience shifting from passive watchers to witnesses. The side server who had laughed earlier stared at the floor now, his face burning. Rena stepped back slowly, as if distance could erase what had already happened. The assistant manager tried one last time. He straightened, clinging to structure. To be clear, he said, voice brittle, there was no reservation under her name. Lena Reyes spoke before the chef could. I don't make reservations here. She said it softly, without arrogance, without force, just truth. And somehow, that was worse. The chef nodded once. Of course you don't. She turned to the host stand. Cancel table 12. Rena blinked. That's the Collins party. They've been waiting 3 months. They can wait another. The chef's eyes didn't leave hers. Table 12 is now Miss Reyes's table. The shift was immediate, violent in its subtlety. Power didn't rise, it relocated, and everyone felt it. The assistant manager stepped back, actually stepped back, as if proximity itself had become dangerous. I didn't know, he said, quieter now, not apologizing, explaining, still trying to survive. Lena Reyes looked at him, really looked at him this time, not as a disturbance, not as a mistake, but as something already understood. I know, she said, there was no anger in it, which made it worse, because it meant this wasn't about him anymore. It was about what he represented. Behind them, more staff had gathered. Kitchen, front of house, even 2 sommeliers lingering near the wine wall, all watching, all recalibrating. The chef took a half step closer to Lena. I am so sorry, she said, and for the first time, her voice carried something close to shame. Lena shook her head slightly. No, she said, now we see clearly. The words settled over the room like dust after something breaks. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud, but irreversible. The assistant manager felt it. The exact moment control left his hands. He looked around, at the staff who no longer looked to him, at the guests who were no longer on his side, at the chef who had already moved past him, and at the woman he had told to sit in the back, now standing at the center of everything he thought he understood. The hierarchy hadn't just shifted, it had exposed him, and there was nowhere left to stand. The silence didn't break, it deepened, like the entire restaurant understood without being told that whatever came next would decide more than just one man's job. Chef Alessandra turned slowly, not back to Lena, to the room. All senior staff, she said, voice steady again, front of house. Now. No shouting, no panic. But it moved people. Managers appeared from corners. Supervisors stepped out from behind partitions. Even the bar lead abandoned a half-finished pour. The assistant manager didn't move. He stood where he was, like if he stayed still enough, the moment might pass him. It didn't. Evan, the chef said. His name, clear, final. He swallowed. Chef, stand there. He froze. Rena looked like she might disappear entirely. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched the tablet, her eyes darting between Lena, the chef, and the growing semicircle of staff forming in front of them. Guests had stopped pretending not to watch. Forks hovered. Conversations died mid-sentence. This wasn't a scene anymore. This was judgment. Chef Alessandra stepped forward. Let's be very precise, she said. She turned, not to Evan, but to Lena. Ma'am, may I? Lena gave the smallest nod. Permission. That was all it took. The chef faced the room again. Our guest was told to sit in the back, with staff. A ripple. Sharp. Uncomfortable. She was interrupted while speaking. Another ripple. She was publicly questioned, dismissed, and accused of lying. Now the murmurs grew teeth. Evan tried again, desperate. I didn't know who she was. The chef cut him off without even looking at him. And that, she said, is the point. Silence snapped back into place. You didn't know who she was, she continued, so you decided who she was. That landed. Hard. The side server who had laughed earlier stepped back instinctively like distance could protect him from being included. It couldn't. You, the chef said, pointing directly at him. His head snapped up. You laughed. His mouth opened. I didn't mean you reinforced humiliation in front of guests. I thought you didn't think. He closed his mouth, collapsed in on himself. Rena took a shaky breath. Chef, I was just following. No, Alessandra said, turning to her now. You were comfortable. Rena's eyes filled. You were comfortable deciding where someone belonged based on how they looked, how they spoke, and what you assumed their role was. I didn't know. Exactly. The word echoed. Not loud, but final. Evan stepped forward, voice cracking now. Chef, this is excessive. We can correct this. We can apologize, offer compensation, Stop, he did, because something in her tone had shifted again. Colder now. Not angry. Resolved. You are not negotiating this, she said. A beat. Then, you are done here. The words hung in the air. Evan blinked. What? You're terminated, effective immediately. It hit. You could feel it move through the room, like a physical force. No, he said, shaking his head. You can't just... There's a process. HR needs... I am the process. She didn't raise her voice, but it landed heavier than anything shouted could have. You do not speak to guests like that in my restaurant. He laughed then, a short, broken sound. In your restaurant? Since when? The mistake. The last one. Chef Alessandra didn't respond. She stepped aside, and for the first time since the reveal, she gave the room a full, unobstructed view of Lena Reyes. Since before any of us had titles, she said quietly. Evan looked at Lena. Really looked. And whatever he saw there, finished it. Because there was no arrogance. No need to prove anything. Just certainty and history, and a level of ownership that didn't need to announce itself to be felt. Security had already been called. No one had seen it happen. But two suited men now stood near the entrance, waiting. Evan's shoulders dropped. Not dramatically. Just gone. Like the structure holding him up had been removed all at once. This is insane, he muttered. No one answered, because there was nothing left to argue. The side server was next. Collect your things, the chef said. He nodded immediately, too fast, almost grateful to be given instructions. Rena stood frozen. Host stand, Alessandra said without looking at her. This Rena swallowed. Am I? Yes. The word broke her. Tears came instantly. But no one moved to comfort her, because everyone understood now. This wasn't cruelty. This was correction. Long overdue. One by one, the small supports of that earlier arrogance collapsed. Gone. Quietly. Completely. The audience, guests, staff, witnesses shifted again. But this time there was no laughter. No whispers. Just something heavier. Recognition. The chef turned back to Lena. And for the first time since all of this began, she softened. Your table is ready, she said. Lena nodded. Nothing more. No speech. No performance. She walked forward, and the room parted. Not out of fear, out of understanding. Every step she took reset something invisible in the space. The way people stood, the way they looked at one another, the way they measured value. A server pulled out her chair at table 12 with shaking hands. She sat, calm, unchanged. As if none of this had required anything from her at all. Across the room, Evan was escorted out. No shouting, no resistance, just absence. Like he had already been erased from the place he thought he controlled. Rena followed minutes later, eyes down. Tablet gone, the side server didn't wait to be walked. He disappeared into the back, knowing there was nothing left for him here. And then service resumed, softly at first, then fully, but something had shifted, irreversibly, because now every person in that room knew power didn't always arrive dressed for it, and the quietest person in the room might be the one who built it. If this story moved you, don't just watch, act. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that dignity is not determined by appearance. Then do more. Respect the elders around you, the auntie in line, the quiet grandmother at the table, The woman you assume doesn't belong, because sometimes they're not visiting. They're the ones who built the room. Support businesses that honor people, not just profit. Call out disrespect when you see it. Teach the next generation that hospitality begins with humility. Subscribe to Beyond the Model Minority for more stories where quiet power is revealed. Because the next Lena Reyes is already in the room, watching, listening, remembering. And when arrogance crosses the line, it won't be noise that corrects it. It will be truth. Make space for those who came before you and confuse silence with weakness or absence with insignificance. Respect the elders, hidden authority, built not borrowed.